Hey guys, normally Nunu is not a champion seen in competitive play. Over the last split, it has been picked 0 times by any major region, and similarly last year it's only gotten picked twice, both by FlyQuest at Worlds. However, in this game between GAM Esports, Vietnam's number 1 seed, and G2, European number 1 seed, Skumon decided to pick Nunu second only in the draft after seeing them first pick Wukong. Now, keep in mind, League of Legends has switched to Fearless, so this is why we might be seeing more champion picks. But still, even in Fearless, nobody has picked Nunu this patch. However, Skumon is the person uniquely situated to play Nunu. Before Skumon went into competitive play, he was actually a Nunu one trick that managed to hit Challenger in EU West. So if there's anybody that I really trust on playing Nunu in competitive play, it will be Skumon. So up 2-0, G2 decides to play this pocket pick out. And in this video, I'll go over how Nunu worked at Worlds and just give a quick overview of what happened this game. Now, before I analyze the gameplay, I want to talk a little bit about the drafts and the runes that were chosen in this game. Overall, G2 has a good comp with good synergy of Miss Fortune and Nico R's together, with Nico R standing very well for Miss Fortune R. G2 is primarily looking to front to back with that combo, and Nunu acting as primary to engage, and Tristana dealing some damage as well, with Ambessa being a pick to provide some backline disruption. On the other hand, GAM is looking to dive the enemy team comp hard. Rakan, Ari both have great mobility and engages, and Jax and Wukong can easily follow up with Jax Q and Wukong R, and Zai could try to self-peel herself with the R. Overall, top is a pretty hard matchup for G2 to win. Mid should be very G2 favorite because Tristana should just push Ari in like all of the time. And bot is slightly G2 skewed in the early to mid game. Taking a look at Nunu's runes here, these are exactly the right runes going into competitive setting. Phase Rush is by far the best major rune page for Nunu, with Skumon identifying that Transcendence is much better than Celerity in this scenario. Additionally, both Triumph and Haste is better than the Relentless rune tree or the Relentless Hunter in the Domination rune tree. Says in competitive there will be a lot more kills, and without Relentless Hunter being able to be stacked up, Triumph and Haste is a good safe option for competitive. For the first clear, we don't see anything too interesting going on. Nunu is starting topside to path towards the strong side bot, and so is Wukong. Eventually, we see both of them hit the double full clear, while Nunu is at bot scuttle and Wukong is at top scuttle, and they both have cleared every camp. Now, keep in mind, if you look at bot, Nico and Miss Fortune are pushing it, and they do what looks like a very sketchy dive. However, if you notice Nico in this play, Nico turns into a cannon minion, which makes this dive so much more doable. If Nico was able to tank the tower for a few more shots, this dive would have actually been a very big success. However, GAM correctly realized that Rakan needed to W to get the Nico out of the cannon form, so that's why Nico couldn't hold the dive, and the dive ultimately didn't work out as well as expected. G2 still got a lot from this dive, but it could have been a lot better if GAM didn't realize the crucial thing they needed to do. After the gank, Nunu recalls and goes back to topside to clear from top to bot. However, since Nunu has wasted a bit of time on this gank, Wukong is able to get to their camps first and have a bit of tempo advantage over Nunu. Wukong manages to sneak between two wards, W over the Dragon Pit in order to get a gank off on Miss Fortune bot lane, and this actually works out very well because Miss Fortune was caught recalling Alcove, leading to the first kill of the game and stopping Nunu from doing Dragon, as without Miss Fortune alive, or without Miss Fortune exerting pressure on the map, being alive, it's kind of hard for G2 to contest this Dragon 2v3. Despite the tempo loss, Nunu is eventually able to come out with the Dragon after enough time. Even with Rakan trying to steal away from Nunu, Rakan has no way of really gaining this smite over Nunu, because even though Rakan has ultimate skill spellbook, Nunu Q plus smite is much bigger. Meanwhile, top is trading very heavily without Nunu on the side, so Wukong gets an opportunity to, he just spam pins top, but Nunu is trying to basically take away anything he can from Wukong's bot side, because Nunu knows that Wukong is pathing up and Wukong gets this dive off. Normally I wouldn't say this is anybody's fault, but this dive is just impossible to outplay. Yeah, Broken Blade tries his best, but honestly it would be a miracle if he survived that. Nunu is not playing for top this game. He has pathed out every timer, so this is not a timer where Nunu can realistically be top. And in order to trade the play, Nunu attempts a gank bot, but Rakan stops Nico from transforming to a cannon minion and chunks Nico out to 1 HP, meaning that this dive is kind of moot since Nico can no longer be in this fight. Now, after all of the failed ganks, Nunu finally is able to show a bit of his power. Rakan face checks in Nico, but no big deal, but the Ahri decides to go in onto this Nico, which doesn't work out because they don't have enough damage, and we get a really good Nico R into Nunu E stun, which manages to kill the Wukong. Now, at around 10 minutes into this game, this is when Nunu truly is the strongest in the mid game. Nunu manages to fistfight Wukong for the blue buff, threatening to secure with Q and Smite, and eventually Wukong missmites and he gets it, but the bigger issue here is that Wukong is now forced out of his topside jungle while Jax is staying 1 HP. This leads to a rather unique dive that I believe only Nunu can pull off. Basically diving a Jax under tower and securing a pretty hefty bound or gold lead for his team and a sizable amount of plays top lane. For our next 10 minutes, nothing very eventful happens with both teams trading side lanes and GAM just giving up the dragon objective to G2. However, this is when G2 decided to start Otacon. This objective is quite hard to take, especially in a scenario like that, but I guess G2 saw that Jax was bought and decided to initiate it. But here's where Nunu makes the biggest mistake of the game. Nunu Qs the Otacon at 6k HP, meaning that he no longer has a Q smite secure. With this in mind, Levi is able to push Nunu out and secure the Otacon for himself. Overall, this fight really goes badly for G2 because they're disjointed. Hansama cannot join the rest of his team. Meanwhile, Caps is not DPSing at all because this is a lost fight. But luckily, G2 managed to come out of this relatively unscathed. However, Nunu is quite a mid to early game champion and falls off a bit late game. And losing this outcome means the game will end as fast as they hoped it would and will prolong the game for an extended amount of time. After the Otacon play, G2 starts to bleed out a little bit, with Caps getting caught in side lane, leading to both mid towers falling. However, they do manage to trade towers topside, so it isn't that bad. One quick thing to note here is Nunu's build. Nunu is building towards Deadman's Play second item instead of Frozen Heart, which in my opinion is just a flat out mistake because Frozen Heart is pretty good into Jax, Wukong, and Xayah. Well, you don't really need the extra movement speed from Deadman's this game because I don't think Nunu's aiming to catch someone off guard isolated. However, Skooma knows Nunu pretty well and knows that this dragon is probably untakeable. So instead of just going into dragon and fighting, he does make a good pick off top lane onto Ahri because of the snowball with Caps TPing behind. This is a bit sketchy because Caps isn't getting there in time, but eventually it works out and Skooma manages to secure the kill. However, this might be a bit too little or too late since GAM is still ahead in gold, and by the second, G2 is getting outscaled in their comp. Now here we see the problem with Nunu in late game team fights. Before this play, Nunu messed up and engaged, which caused Jax TP flank and killed a Misfortune. However, this is still a 4v5, but in these late game fights where Nunu is not the one engaging, he is pretty useless, and we can see this in the later fight resulting later on. We can see Ambessa try to chunk the Rakan for some damage while Caps jumps in. However, Skooma can only just watch because on Nunu you can't really do anything unless if you commit your whole body, and if Nunu committed the whole body there, he would be dead. Now we can see the trend continue with GAM executing the functions of their team correctly. Remember, GAM is looking to get fast engages and pick, and Misfortune is caught out once again, leading to her death. With Baron up, this is a very dangerous situation from G2, and it becomes even worse when Nico also dies. To the extreme good follow-up they have. Like Ahri can R over the wall, Rakan can follow, Wukong can W over the wall, etc, etc. And overall, now that Sense and Bessa is looking at bot lane, although Nunu has a bigger smite than Wukong, GAM isn't dumb. They can zone Nunu off the Baron if they wanted to, and they do secure the Baron in exchange for a mid T1 turret. Now, at this point of the game, even though Skooma had not died once on Nunu, this is a point where Nunu kind of becomes useless when you're 31 minutes deep into a game. So here we see Skooma make his one really NT play of the game. He looks for a snowball to try and maybe hit the Jackson rung. However, before he can proc Phase Rush, they just kill him, and this eventually leads to G2, or G2 just falling over and dying. Overall, I think Skumon did play pretty well this game given the scenarios that he had, but his one biggest mistake that threw the team the entire game was smiting Otacon at 6,000. Without that Otacon smite, I think we would have seen totally different games and more games of Nunu at Worlds. However, unfortunately, I don't think this is the case, and I don't think anybody else is going to pick Nunu at MSI this year. Anyways, that's it for me. Thanks for watching, and let me know if you want to see more of this content. Subscribe to me if you haven't, and peace.